There are moments in life when the silence is too loud, when even our own heartbeat feels like a reminder of how meaningless everything seems. You wake up, move through your day, answer messages, meet deadlines. But deep down, nothing feels real. The things that used to bring you joy, they now feel flat. Your dreams? Faded. And the worst part? No one notices. On the outside, you look fine, but inside, you're screaming into a void. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because when you finally sit alone, face to face with your emptiness, you realize you've been running from yourself your entire life. But what if this emptiness is not a curse, but a compass? What if this ache you're feeling is not a sign that life is broken, but a sign that your soul is waking up?" In today's world, people can have everything, money, followers, recognition, and still feel absolutely empty inside. We live in an age of hyperconnection, yet we've never felt so disconnected from ourselves. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, understood this long before social media or modern society accelerated the pace of our inner collapse. He believed that the real crisis is not financial, political, or romantic, it's spiritual. It's a disconnection from the inner self, from the archetypes that guide us, and from the unconscious forces that shape our lives. For Jung, the absence of meaning wasn't just a psychological discomfort. It was a form of soul sickness, a warning sign, a whisper from the unconscious saying, "You've gone too far from who you truly are." And in that warning lies the first key. You see, most people try to fill this inner void with distractions, relationships, work, endless scrolling. But Jung teaches us something radically different. He teaches us to enter the void, not to escape it. Because in that darkness, in that silence, in that unbearable stillness, something ancient begins to stir. A calling, a symbol, a myth waiting to be lived. So if you feel like everything is pointless right now, don't run. Stay. Because this story is for you. This is the weight of existential emptiness, and it's one of the most silent epidemics of our time. Carl Jung didn't call it depression. He didn't label it a disorder. Instead, he recognized it as a spiritual problem, a symptom that something within us is deeply out of alignment. Jung believed that the modern person suffers from a loss of connection with the self, not the ego, not the personality we show the world, but the deeper core of who we truly are. And when that connection is lost, life begins to feel mechanical. Purpose fades, meaning dissolves, and we find ourselves trapped in routines that keep us alive, but no longer make us feel alive. This disconnection doesn't happen overnight. It begins subtly. You choose a career that pays well but doesn't ignite your soul. You stay in a relationship out of fear, not love. You silence your creativity to be practical. You abandon your dreams to be accepted. Each time, a part of you dies quietly. And eventually you wake up one day wondering, how did I get here? Why does none of this matter anymore? Jung taught that this inner deadness is the result of ignoring our inner voice, what he called the unconscious. It's not just a reservoir of memories or trauma. The unconscious for Jung is sacred territory. It's where our forgotten truths, archetypes, and symbols reside. It's the place where the soul speaks in dreams, in fantasies, in sudden intuitions. But in modern life, we are trained to ignore that voice. We value logic over intuition, achievement over introspection, performance over authenticity. And so we drift further and further away from our inner world, until, one day, that world rebels. This rebellion often comes as a crisis, a breakdown, a period of deep sadness or numbness where nothing seems to make sense. But Jung saw this moment not as the end, but as the beginning of individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming whole. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. And realness requires that we confront the parts of ourselves we've rejected. The anger, the sadness, the desires, the fears, the shadow. You see, Jung taught that every person carries a shadow, an unconscious part of ourselves made up of everything we've disowned. And when we feel that life has no meaning, it's often because the shadow has grown too large. It's taken over. It's asking to be seen. This is why sometimes the most important thing you can do when you feel nothing is to stop trying to feel better. Instead, feel deeper. Sit with the emptiness, ask it questions, listen to its answers. Because that darkness, it's not here to destroy you, it's here to reveal you. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That means true healing doesn't come from pretending everything is okay. It comes from facing what's not okay, and that takes courage. But here's the beauty. When you stop running from your emptiness, you start reclaiming pieces of yourself. You remember the child you once were, the one who dreamed without limits. You hear the voice that whispers truths society taught you to ignore. You reconnect with your instincts, your creativity, your wildness, and you begin to feel alive again. Of course, this isn't an easy path. There's no quick fix. The journey inward requires solitude, honesty, and time. But Jung believed it was the only path worth taking, because in finding ourselves, we begin to find our place in the world, not as robots doing what we're told, but as souls living from truth. And here's what's even more powerful. When you start this journey, you realize you're not alone. Across history, across cultures, people have walked this same path. They've written myths, created symbols, and told stories about it. The hero's journey, the dark night of the soul, the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's all the same story. Your story. Our story. The meaning you're searching for isn't out there in some achievement or relationship or destination. It's inside you. Waiting. Quietly. Patiently. In the silence. In the stillness. Beneath the noise of the world. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is self-regulating, that even in your darkest moment, something deep within you is working to restore balance. The pain you feel now, it's a message, a signal that something must change. Not because you're broken, but because you're ready to evolve. So, if you're feeling like life has lost its meaning, know this. That very feeling might be your soul trying to wake you up. Don't ignore it, don't numb it, don't run from it. Listen. Lean in, begin the conversation, and slowly, step by step, you'll begin to feel again. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Meaning doesn't fall from the sky. It's not given to us, it's created. Through truth, through courage, through the decision to live from the inside out. And that journey starts now. When you've lost all sense of purpose, you instinctively search for something big. A revelation, a life-changing breakthrough, some grand mission that will make you feel whole again. But Carl Jung warned us, he who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. Because the truth is, most of us have been taught to chase purpose the wrong way. We chase status, we chase validation, we chase outcomes, and yet none of these truly satisfy. Because purpose isn't something you get, it's something you become, and it starts in the smallest places. Jung believed the psyche speaks to us in symbols, through dreams, gestures, recurring thoughts, strange emotions. The unconscious doesn't scream, it whispers, and that whisper might be in the way you always look at the sky when you're sad, or how you're drawn to stories about healing, or how your soul feels slightly more alive when your hands touch soil or music or words. The modern world says, find your niche, monetize your passion, scale your purpose. But Jung would say, wait. First, listen, then feel, and only then, move. Because sometimes the deepest meaning is hidden in the most ordinary things. A conversation with an old friend that stirs something ancient in you. A walk in silence where suddenly you remember what peace feels like. The act of writing one page in a journal and realizing it was the first honest thing you've said in weeks. These moments matter. Jung called it synchronicity. Those seemingly random events that feel too meaningful to be coincidences. A book falls off a shelf. A stranger says exactly what you needed to hear. You dream about an image you've never seen, then stumble upon it the next day. These are not accidents. They are signs, threads, invitations. When you feel like life is meaningless, Jung wouldn't tell you to think positive or set goals. He would tell you to pay attention. Because meaning often reveals itself, not in your plans, but in your openness. So the next time your heart pulls you towards something, even if it seems irrational, impractical, or small, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me is speaking right now? What is this moment trying to awaken in me? Because maybe your obsession with stargazing isn't just a hobby, it's a symbol of your longing to reconnect with something eternal. Maybe your tears during a film aren't just emotion, they're reminders of an archetype moving through you. Maybe your restlessness at work isn't laziness, it's your soul refusing to be silenced. Carl Jung taught us that the self, the totality of who you are, is always trying to emerge, even when your ego wants comfort, even when society wants conformity. And that emergence begins when you start taking your inner world seriously. So how do you find purpose again? Start by reclaiming your attention. Most of us are so overstimulated we've forgotten how to be still. We scroll, we react, we consume. But Jung believed in integration, the process of taking all the fragmented parts of yourself and weaving them into something whole. And integration doesn't happen in distraction, it happens in awareness. Notice the patterns in your thoughts, the feelings that keep returning, the dreams that make you wake up with your heart pounding. Write them down, sketch them, sit with them, because inside those moments live the keys to your meaning. And don't be afraid to descend into yourself. Jung often described this process as a journey into the underworld, where you meet your shadow, your fears, your wounds. But in facing them, you also uncover your power, your clarity, your calling. Sometimes it means grieving the life you thought you wanted, letting go of the roles you were praised for, but that no longer fit, saying goodbye to dreams that were never really yours, and in that grief, finding something honest. Real purpose begins here, not in what you can prove, but in what you can feel deeply. Not in pleasing others, but in aligning with what makes your soul expand. Maybe that means painting even if no one sees it. Maybe that means changing careers at 40 because you finally know who you are. Maybe that means leaving the relationship where you feel unseen so you can finally be with yourself. Jung would say this is not selfish, this is sacred. Because the world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs people who are alive, people who have met their darkness and still chose light. People who live with meaning, not because they found the answers, but because they dared to ask better questions. And sometimes those questions are simple. What makes me feel most me? What parts of myself have I silenced to be loved? What truth am I avoiding? And what freedom might it bring if I faced it? These questions don't always lead to instant clarity, but they always lead you inward. And inward is where the healing begins. Inward is where meaning lives. You don't need to save the world to live a meaningful life. Sometimes choosing to heal your own trauma is the revolution. Sometimes showing up fully present with someone you love is the meaning. Sometimes learning to love yourself in the silence of your own room is the breakthrough. Carl Jung never promised that the path to meaning would be easy, but he did promise it would be worth it. Because once you touch that inner spark again, once you remember who you truly are, you carry something the world can't give and can never take away. You carry yourself. And that is where meaning is born. There's a reason why most people never truly find themselves. It's not because they're lazy, or lost, or broken. It's because they're afraid. Afraid of going where no one else can follow. Afraid of facing the silence. Afraid of seeing the truth, that becoming who you really are, yes, will cost you who you were told to be. Carl Jung called this process the individuation journey, the path to becoming a whole and integrated self. But individuation isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering what you've always been, beneath the masks, beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear. And that remembering begins when the outer world no longer gives you what your inner world needs. The job you thought would make you feel secure doesn't. The relationship you thought would complete you leaves you empty. The success you once craved feels hollow now. It's in those moments, when the ego starts to crack, that the real you begins to emerge. Not the version of you who smiles to fit in, but the version that speaks when others go silent, the version that feels deeply, even when it's inconvenient, the version that knows, without words, what matters most. But this emergence doesn't happen on its own. You must walk into the fire voluntarily. You must choose to confront what you've buried, the anger you've suppressed, the wounds you've avoided, the parts of you that were never accepted. Jung called this your shadow, not because it's evil, but because it's hidden. And here's the paradox. Only by confronting the shadow do you become whole. Because the shadow holds your power, your truth, your freedom. When you avoid it, you stay fragmented. But when you face it, you integrate, you mature, you evolve. This is what Jung meant by individuation, not perfection, not sainthood, but integration. A person who knows their darkness and is no longer controlled by it. A person who embraces their contradictions, their instincts, their emotions, not to act them out, but to own them. A person who doesn't need to pretend anymore. That's real power. Because when you're integrated, you stop living for approval, you stop chasing validation, you stop molding yourself to fit expectations that never belong to you. You begin to live authentically. You say yes only when you mean it. You walk away when your soul is no longer at peace. You speak truth, even when it shakes your voice. You don't need to shout who you are, your presence says it. That's the power of individuation. It makes you untouchable in the best way. Not because you don't feel, but because you've learned to feel without breaking. Jung taught that the psyche naturally longs for this integration. Your dreams point you toward it. Your emotional triggers point you toward it. Even your suffering points you toward it. Because pain is the signal. It shows you what's out of alignment. It shows you where your soul is being ignored. And the more you resist this process, the more life will whisper, then shout, until you listen. So if you're here, if something in you is stirring, don't ignore it. That's not restlessness. That's yourself calling you home. The path won't be easy. The world will try to distract you. People will misunderstand you. Your own ego will fight back. Because change feels like death until it becomes rebirth. But you were not born to stay asleep. You were born to awaken, to remember your sacred fire, to walk with your head high, not because you're perfect, but because you finally know who you are. This is the gift of Jung's work. It's not just psychology. It's a spiritual initiation, her return to self, a sacred rebellion against the numbness of modern life. Because when you truly individuate, you stop living from the outside in. You stop reacting to what others want, and you start creating from a place so deep, so rooted, so real, that everything you touch carries meaning. Your relationships shift. You no longer settle for half-hearted love. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You show up, fully, with boundaries, with compassion, with presence, because you've met yourself, and that changes everything. Your work transforms. You don't chase empty goals. You don't hustle to prove your worth. You do what calls you, what lights a fire in your chest. And that passion, it moves people, not because it's flashy, but because it's true. You walk the world differently. You're no longer seeking to belong. You know that you are the belonging. You carry it within you. And maybe most importantly, you forgive. You forgive the past version of yourself who didn't know better. You forgive the people who wounded you from their own pain. You forgive life for not turning out how you imagined, and you thank it for turning you into who you were meant to be. This is individuation. It's not a destination. It's a path you walk every day, in your choices, in your silence, in your courage to live with your eyes open and your heart undefended. Jung believed that every soul has a center, a unique pattern, a destiny that wants to unfold. Your only task is to clear the way, to stop dimming your light, to stop hiding behind roles, to live from the self, not the mask. And when you do, something miraculous happens. You begin to feel alive again, not because life became easier, but because you became realer. And in that authenticity, in that sacred alignment, you realize this is what you were searching for all along. Not meaning, not answers, not escape, but yourself. So if you've been walking through life feeling like something's missing, maybe it's not something out there that needs to change. Maybe it's something within you, waiting to awaken. Carl Jung didn't promise that the journey to wholeness would be comfortable. He promised it would be worth it. Because nothing compares to the moment when you finally see yourself, not through the eyes of society, not through the lens of your wounds, but through the mirror of your soul. That's when the real healing begins. That's when the endless search quiets. Not because you found a new role to play, but because you stopped playing altogether. You started being the man or woman who no longer needs to perform, being the soul who no longer needs approval, being the presence that no longer chases love, but radiates it. And here's the truth. Once you meet yourself, you can never go back to who you were. You won't fit in the same places. You won't tolerate the same lies. You won't abandon yourself just to belong. You'll walk taller, speak slower, listen deeper. You'll know when to stay, you'll know when to leave. You'll choose peace, not because life is quiet, but because you are. This is the legacy of Carl Jung's wisdom. It's not just about understanding your psyche, it's about reclaiming your soul. So ask yourself, who am I when no one's watching? What do I know that I've been taught to forget? What part of me is still waiting, to be loved, not fixed? Start there, not tomorrow, not when it's easy, now. Because your real life, the one you were meant to live, begins the moment you stop running from yourself. And if you're still breathing, it's not too late. Your self has been waiting patiently. It's time to return. Welcome home.